Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Robert Rodriguez. So we're going to throw it to you guys pretty quickly, so think of some questions. I'm going to start with a couple myself.
Who here has seen the movie before? Or who hasn't seen the movie? Who's not seen the movie?
Who's not seen it?
Were you surprised that there were vampires? You were? That's a pure audience. Because in the trailer, when the movie came out, it gave it away, you know. But the way we always wanted it to be was where you didn't know. And the first test audience we showed it to, they didn't know what to think. So the people in the front, they usually ask them, what did you think of the movie? And no one's getting around to the vampires. You can tell that somebody's really just totally confused. It's like, wait a minute. This movie is all wrong. You never mentioned vampires the whole first half of the movie. It was completely wrong in all the best ways. And that's why Quentin actually couldn't get it made. It was the first script that he wrote. And people would look at it and go, it's weird, it's like 2 movies in one, it's like cut in half. But he, that was kind of the beauty of it, but nobody would make it. And then Pulp Fiction came out. That was a big hit. And so suddenly they wanted to make anything he wrote. It was like, oh, it's great, it's 2 movies in one. And so all the stuff that was a negative suddenly seemed like a positive, and we're able to make it right away. But anyway, go ahead.
So you didn't encounter that much. Once you actually got on board, there wasn't much kickback to the like 2 movies in one. Really,
Pulp Fiction was one of the weirdest movies to come out. You know, it really threw people for a loop. It was kind of like in the 70s when Easy Rider hit, and the studios were like, what is this picture? We don't have anything like this on our slate. I remember Columbia came to me, because I was working on Desperado, and they said, Pulp Fiction, we don't even know what kids want now. It's like this movie, Pulp Fiction. We don't have anything in our schedule except maybe Desperado. Do you think that's, oh yeah, of course, that's the same audience. We know what we're doing. They asked Quentin in the movie. But Quentin said, you know, right now they'll make anything in mind. Let's go make Dusk now before they change their mind. And he was starting to cannibalize that script. It was his first script. But like the Ezekiel speech in Pulp Fiction was originally in this. Jacob Fuller would say that. So he took that, he was taking all kinds of stuff from it. So let's make this before you know, take everything out of it that's really great. And so we ran off and made it.
So is that sort of what drew you to the project, that sort of unusual structure? I mean, this was your first movie that you were directing, not from your own script, so that's probably not a decision you make lightly. Like, what's the first movie I'm going to make from somebody else's script?
Well, Quentin and I had already become friends. We met on the festival circuit together when I had El Mariachi and he had Reservoir Dogs. And we were on the same panels together in the same festivals defending our movies, because there was panels like violence in movies in the 90s, even though it was only 92. And we just saw a common, you know, both our movies had guys dressed in black and they're action, violent. And we became friends, and I put him in Desperado, and that was before Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction hit, and actually he wrote Pulp Fiction while I was writing Desperado. We both had offices next to each other on the Sony lot, because originally Pulp Fiction was for TriStar. And then he went and did it at Miramax, and it became a hit. So he came to me while we were working on 4 Rooms and said, I got my first script that you should do, because it takes place in Mexico, and you're Mexican, so what don't you do? And because I'm not going to direct it, but I would love to do a rewrite on it, and you direct it, let's go make it together. Let's go make this our next film, because we're really enjoying working together. And so I said, I would totally want to cast you as Richie, because I'd love to play Richie. And he said, how about Robert Blake for Seth? And I was like, check out George Clooney over there. I quickly had to scramble and find someone else. He really wanted Robert Blake. I met with Robert Blake, and he was a huge Beretta fan, Robert Blake fan. And I thought, man, I better find somebody quick. And I couldn't find an actor that I really liked. All the actors that normally do these kind of roles, it just felt like you'd seen them do it too many times. I really felt like somebody new was going to come around the corner, but I couldn't find him anywhere, and the date was coming up closer and closer. And then finally, I saw ER, because Quentin was going to direct one, and I looked at George Clooney, but back then he would act with his head down a lot. You really couldn't see him very well, and he was a pediatrician, so he didn't exactly, you know, say that that's going to be Seth, so I kind of dismissed him, and then I saw him again on a talk show. It was a talk show where he didn't like the host at all, so it was a group, and he's just sitting there with his boot out, like just brooding, and I went, there's something about that guy. You know, I'm going to call him up and have him come meet with me. He rode up into my house on a Harley, and it was like, this guy's like a man's man. It's okay, you gotta help me get this somehow, because otherwise I'm stuck with Robert Blake. So I was scrambling trying to think, how can I get Quentin off that? And then I happened to see a US weekly cover that had George on it. And he's kind of like that, his chin's up. And I went to Quentin, hey Quentin, look, there's that guy George Clooney. You know, you guys could kind of be brothers. And Quinn's like, hey man, you're right, man. No, I think that should be the guy who plays Seth. And so then Blake was out, Clooney was in, and the rest is history.
One of the things I fell in love with as a kid watching the movie was the set, well, the interior, the Titty Twister, which I still think is one of the greatest movie sets ever built. There's so much detail all over it. Even now, I'm seeing it the 9th or 10th time. I'm still like finding myself scanning every corner for it.
It's like this place.
Well,
it's detail.
But you also have to. It's basically like where you have an hour's worth of set pieces. So talk a bit about working with the crew to like design the set, like from a visual standpoint, and also like how are we going to make sure we have room to shoot and block like all the stuff we want to do?
There's a lot of action, and Quentin wrote it off somebody else's idea. So the idea was, they go into a Mexican bar, and I thought the Mexican bar doesn't have a lot of room, and
let me tell you something.
And vampires tend to have, be very almost like European in nature. I thought, well, I'm going to do it like Quentin said, hey, you're Mexican, so let me bring a Mexican flavor to it. Let me go see if there's any like Mesoamerican legends, Aztec or Mayan, that sound kind of like snake, or sort of like blood cult-like. And I found a snake cult that worshipped the sun, that would kill to keep the sun coming up. And I kind of there was a statue of a woman with a skull face and snakes in her hand. Originally, there was no Salma Hayek dance scene. In fact, that character's name was Blonde Death. Quentin had imagined someone like Madonna playing it. I said, well, it's in Mexico, it actually should be a Mexican character. And I just used this featherless girl named Salma Hayek. She would be fantastic in this role. So he rewrote it for her. And I wanted her to come out and be almost like presented with a snake. And that was the one that kind of popped out the most. She saw the snake, and she was petrified. She couldn't even. And it's one of those things, as a director, you have to learn how to negotiate with an actor, because I realized, if she's got to dance with this thing like next week, and she's like that, you're going to have to, get her over that fear. And I said, Quentin really wanted Madonna for this role. She's like barely touching it. Madonna would be fucking the snake right now. You better get it. Put the thing on, she's moving around. She did that dance with no choreography. She's like, well, I'm going to need a choreographer. I said, no, I don't want any choreography. I don't want you doing dance moves. It's going to be you and me designing the dance. I want it to be really primal. And it happened to fall on my birthday, and so I'm operating the Steadicam on that shot. And she comes out, and Robert De Niro knew one of the producers. He happened to show up and was there in the back, and she just had to fucking do it. And you see, it's like one of those movie magic moments when she pulls that off. And that's kind of the stuff you live for when you make a film. All those challenges are stacked up against you, and somehow when magic wants to happen, you roll a camera and it just happens. And that's one of the most magical dances ever.
Did you use that advice again for Jessica Alba in Sin City?
Jessica Alba already just knew how to dance. And so her first take, we'd shoot her, and everybody just had their jaw down. She was, want me to do something different? I was like, we can just shoot this all day. I have no notes, except let's just roll again.
We have some questions out there, right there in the center.
Oh yeah, the flash cuts when you're... That particular sequence, the editing process, I love to edit. I'd always edited my own films, and it was a big I kind of see it cut when I shoot. So that scene in particular, I remember George Clooney supposed to walk in and see the girl, and she was just going to be shot, and if you just saw what she looked like, it wouldn't be even as horrific as I wanted it to feel. I wanted you to think, oh my God, what's he even looking at? You don't even get to see it. So I had in mind that I would just do these flash frames as he's talking, because it was kind of a long speech, so I was trying to think, how do I stage it? And that was the time George had to really trust me, because he came in and he said, I feel just silly standing here staring off. I feel like I should be talking to him and turn around. I said, no, don't turn around, because I have this thing, I want to be editing, and you're trying to explain it, and I go, you just have to trust me. I'll show it to you tomorrow once I cut it together. Actually in a couple of days. This was our first week of filming, and he was trained on TV, which is don't trust the director at all. Because on TV, you have to keep track of your character. And every director that comes in is going to be like trying to get him to cry every episode. He's got to be enough. I'm already crying in episode 4 and 7, so I can't, you know, you kind of have to gauge your own. In TV, it's very different. But I shot it the way I wanted, showed it to him, and he saw it, and he went, okay, I'll do whatever you want from now on. Because it really proved that as odd as it felt for him to stand there, that there was a stylization I was going for and something else I was going for. So that gave me a lot of confidence too, you know, as a director early on, because you have to kind of stand up and go, best thing is I can actually prove it to you, but it's not digital age, so you actually take a couple of days to actually show it by the time the film's processed and all that. But the editing style was definitely something that I would cut, and I cut in my house. I was the first movie on the Sony lot to have a digital editing system when I did Desperado, and by this point I had the Avid in my house, and I cut in my house, and I would do the sound in my house. I'd have the sound guys downstairs there in LA, and Jim Cameron came over and said, "I hear you have an Avid in your house," because nobody had that. It's like what, you know, garage recording today. This was back in the day. You know, this was 1995. When I was doing this. This was way early days. People were still on film. And he said, I showed him, yeah, look, I got 4 rooms and Desperado and Dusk on the system. And I kind of switched between each project. I'm cutting them together. He's like, I hate working with editors. They never he said, I'm going to tear down a wall in my house. I'm going to put in an Avid. I'm going to cut my next movie. And he cut the Titanic. And he was one of the editors on it. Got an Oscar for editing. But it was like a revolutionary way to just edit back then. It was to just cut your own movie. And it came about because I did Mariachi where I was the editor. So I was able to, once you set a precedent like that, it's easy to do. They weren't going to even let me edit Desperado because they said, no director's ever edited his own movie. And I said, well, you bought Mariachi and edited that. So like, okay, but you have to edit it in LA so we can watch it. That's why I was in LA at that time. But I love the editing. One of the best stories was I edited all night the sequence at the going through the Mexican border, and I was cutting, and I kind of half noticed that it wasn't saving. And it crashed, and I lost all the night's work. It never happened to me before. And I was so pissed. I was like, I can't go restructure all that. I went to bed, called the technicians, came in, they were fixing it. I got up the next morning, and I kind of remembered to cut. It's like, you know, the hardest part about cutting isn't really the cuts, it's getting to the place where you make that cut, kind of trying this and trying that. So I kind of remembered where everything was, and I kind of restructured it pretty quickly. I put it back together in about a half hour, and the technician was just like, I've never seen anyone edit that fast. He just put a whole sequence together, and I was just like, yeah, you know, I kind of see it in my head. Let the legend grow. It's faster than everyone ever seen. Complete scene from beginning to end in like 30 minutes.
We got it, yeah, right down here.
Going off of that, building confidence early in your career, I watched, you know, a lot of your DVDs, a lot of the special features. I took that advice, went out, shot a short film.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you. But going from there, like can you name maybe an instance on this movie or another early movie where someone on the cast or something wasn't sure that you were on the right track, or maybe thought like, well, this isn't how something's done. How did you maybe convince them what you were doing was what's good for the movie, or how did you make it comfortable?
How do you convince the actor? And it's different with every actor. The George Clooney one was one example. Harvey Keitel in the rehearsal process said, I just don't feel like I would be sitting here. I think right now, even though the scene's written that way, I feel like I would go for the door. That one part where he goes, I'm leaving, you know, you're not taking my kids, and that's it, and he goes for the door, that was just him as an actor improvising. And it was fine, because I knew that he'd end up back on the seat where I needed him. But you kind of let them explore, and everyone's different. Some people will do exactly what you say, and they want guidance. Someone else will like float it around. And it's really about just adapting. You can't just be so precious about what you want to do that you don't explore an option that could be really good. And if someone's feeling it. At the same time, if somebody is always doing that, then you gotta go, okay, just at the end of the day, you gotta just kind of follow the text. So it kind of depends on the project. This one was so fun and collaborative, and things would just happen. Like the reason Cheech Marin is in 3 roles is only because just before you start shooting, you have a table read. You get your actors together, your main actors, and I'll play like 3 or 4 parts. Cheech, you read the Border Patrol. Cheech was there to play the Chet role. We said, go ahead and read the Border Patrol guy, and go ahead and read Carlos guy at the end. And we're going to get Eric Estrada or somebody like for that role. You read those, Quentin will read, Richie, and a couple of the other roles. And you only have like 6 or 7 of the main actors there. Cheech would do a different voice for each character. And it was so entertaining that at the end, I was just like, my God, I wish Cheech could play all 3. And I went to my office and thought, I wonder if he could play all 3. And then Quentin walked in and goes, man, I was just thinking, you know, Cheech should play all 3. I was just thinking the same thing, let's give him all 3. And he's never shaved his mustache. We'll shave his mustache for one of them. So he shaved his mustache for the first time for that role, which is why at first people didn't recognize him. because they had never seen him without a mustache. Now you've seen him like that a lot, but back in that time when that movie came out. It kind of depends. That's a good question.
Do we have any upstairs? Don't want to miss anybody. Yeah, right here.
Do you have any auditions, like to be in your show or movies here in Austin?
Do I have any auditions for movies? Yeah, we do. You know, we audition here all the time. Beth Sepko at Third Coast Casting does all my casting. If you go into her, she will put you on file and bring you in for different, smaller stuff and work yourself up. So yeah, definitely look for that. I got some great auditions for this. I have an early Matthew McConaughey reading for the part at the beginning of The Clerk that John Hawkes played. John Hawkes, where he says, I should get a fucking Academy Award. He ended up 15 years later getting an Academy Award nomination for Winter's Bone. He's an Austinite. He's from Austin, and I knew him from here. He was in another movie of mine called Road Racers. I have a Ben Affleck audition for one of the roles. Yeah, pretty fun. Back early days, you go back and you see people that you recognize who've gone and made it. And they were up for a small part in yours and didn't get it because they weren't bad enough to be the bad guy. Of course not, because they're supposed to be the lead in another movie later on. But that's pretty cool, seeing all the different people who would come in, a lot of classic actors. Tom Savini sent his tape in to us on his own. And we always loved him as an actor. We didn't hire him for his effects at all. He sent us this audition tape that was just like what you saw in the movie. We thought, this guy's fantastic. Let's put Tom Savini in this movie. So it was a real mix of highbrow actors like Harvey Keitel and then guys like Fred Williamson and Tom Savini. And it was we loved that sort of Grindhouse type mix that we ended up doing again later at Grindhouse. But that was the beginnings of that, 2 movies in one that we love so much.
We got time for maybe like 2 more right there on the end.
Will we ever see Robert Rodriguez in a Quentin Tarantino film?
Will you ever see me in a Quentin Tarantino film? I was just pointing that out on Pulp Fiction. My son was editing one of the promos for I have a television network called El Rey. We're going to be showing Pulp Fiction all this month. And he edited it together. He goes, well, look at it, push pause. You know that scene there with the wolf that Harvey Keitel plays, and there's Quentin, and there's him. I'm standing right over here. I was visiting the set that day. That's about as close as I'll get to be. I was visiting the set, hiding behind it. So it's actually cool to see the scene and know, wow, I'm actually right over there. It's pretty wild. But this movie is, the whole thing with the pyramid at the end was I just wanted to suggest a lore, because it was just a bar. So I really thought, let's make this bar actually a temple, the top of a temple. Quentin loved that. And he said, hey, it's kind of clever. So they've been killing people all this time, and now they just, with the times, turned it into a bar, but it's really a pyramid. So yeah, I wanted the audience to feel like there was more story to it. And I've had that it's a matte painting. It was actually done as a painting on my wall since the movie. I still have it in my office, and I would look at it and go, I wish I could have explored that more. And then when I got a television network last year, the El Rey Network, that was our first show. I said, I want to go explore that whole mythology that I had just hinted at. And so that was really great to go back, do the snake dance again. We actually remade this movie in season 1 to retell it in a different way, to build the characters up for season 2 and 3. Season 2 premieres next week, August 25th, on El Rey Network. So if you haven't seen the TV series version of this, now that you've seen the movie again, it's really